The small silver bell above the door jingled with a cheerful trill, slicing through the soft morning hum of conversation and clinking dishes. Darren Locke stepped inside the Portland branch of Maple and Hearth, his own restaurant chain, but not as the millionaire CEO known for turning pancakes into an empire. Today, he was someone else entirely. Gary Mitchell, food blogger, drifter from Sacramento, a man with a weathered leather messenger bag slung over one shoulder, a faded press badge pinned to a flannel shirt that hadn't seen a proper iron in years. The wiry beard, discount store clothing, and tired slouch weren't just part of a costume. They were a disguise he'd refined over 3 years of unannounced visits. Not once had one of his 847 employees across a dozen states seen past the act. Funny, he thought, how power becomes invisible when you cover it in a little dust and denim. "Welcome to Maple and Hearth," came a bright voice from behind the counter. A young man, early 20s maybe, stood beneath a handwritten name tag that read, "Kyle, Manager." His smile was too wide to be real, the kind practiced in break room mirrors. Eager, automatic, with just a trace of fatigue hiding behind the eyes. Darren scanned the room. This location had been on corporate's watch list for months. Reports showed dwindling foot traffic, uninspired food, and a growing stream of customer complaints. He'd expected to walk into a tired dining room run by a checked-out team, perhaps one more underperforming link in the chain. Instead, the room pulsed with life. Every table was filled, laughter echoed off the warm cream walls, and the aroma of rich, freshly brewed coffee danced in the air like a comforting memory. Most shocking of all, people were eating, actually eating, plates nearly licked clean instead of abandoned with food pushed to one side. This wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. Surviving within a safe home. "Table for one?" Kyle asked, flipping through a worn menu with practiced ease. "Actually," Darren said with a casual grin, pulling a business card from his pocket. "I'm Gary Mitchell from West Coast Eats, doing a feature on Portland's hidden breakfast gems. Mind if I ask a few questions?" Kyle's face lit up like he'd just been handed a winning lottery ticket. "No way! That's awesome! Sit anywhere. Can I grab you our signature coffee? It's locally roasted. People love it." Darren nodded, still playing the part. "Heard you've had quite the turnaround." "That's rare these days, especially for breakfast joints. What changed?" Kyle leaned in, lowering his voice like he was sharing state secrets. "Between you and me, 6 months ago this place was sinking fast. Corporate was thinking about shutting us down. But then I created a new pancake recipe, and everything changed. We went from maybe 30 customers a day to over 100. Darren's eyebrows arched, hiding his growing curiosity behind a neutral nod. Kyle looked barely out of high school, and yet he was claiming to have reinvented breakfast? "You made the recipe yourself?" he asked, half expecting the usual corporate spin. "Every part of it," Kyle beamed, his chest puffing out. "I've always been into culinary innovation. Took me weeks of experimenting, changing ratios, tweaking flavors, trying different batters. Corporate loved it. Even gave me a $5,000 0 cents bonus." "Incredible," Darren replied, keeping his voice calm, but his thoughts spun. It wasn't that Kyle seemed dishonest. He was just too young, too polished in his delivery. Something about it didn't sit right. "Love to try it," Darren said. "Coming right up," Kyle chirped, disappearing into the back. Darren took the opportunity to look closer. The place had none of the cold, clean uniformity of most Maple and Hearth spots. The walls held paintings by local artists. The chairs didn't match. There were little handmade signs, quotes about breakfast and family. It felt less like a franchise and more like a friend's kitchen. It had soul. Moments later, Kyle returned with a plate and Darren's breath caught. 3 golden pancakes, stacked like soft clouds, drizzled in real maple syrup, and crowned with a berry compote that shimmered like summer sunshine. Not the processed purple mush his supply chains pushed, but actual fruit. Blueberries and strawberries, still plump, their skins glistening. But it wasn't the look that floored him. It was the smell. Darren's fork trembled as he sliced through the top pancake. Steam rose, carrying him back in time, to a tiny kitchen in rural Tennessee, to Sunday mornings with his Grandma Rose, who hummed hymns while mixing pancake batter by hand in a cracked ceramic bowl. She'd passed when Darren was 12, taking her recipes, her laughter, and a piece of his heart with her. He took a bite. Time collapsed. The edges crisped just right, the inside soft as memory, with a hint of vanilla and something deeper. Something warm, safe, like being wrapped in a quilt you didn't know you missed. His eyes stung unexpectedly. It wasn't just food. It was home. Kyle's voice cut in like a distant echo. Good, right? Darren set the fork down gently, like placing flowers on a grave. He fought to maintain his composure. Yes, he managed. It's extraordinary. Kyle nearly glowed. It's all in the technique. The folding of the wet ingredients, the rest time, the heat of the griddle. Most people overlook that, but it matters. Darren nodded, but his mind was elsewhere, chasing ghosts and questions. Something didn't add up. Kyle's enthusiasm felt real, but this level of culinary perfection didn't just come from trial and error. And if these pancakes truly had the power to stir forgotten memories in a man who built a billion-dollar brand on breakfast, where had that power come from? And more importantly, who had truly wielded it? There was something rehearsed about the way Kyle had explained the pancake recipe, too polished, like he was delivering a pitch rather than sharing a passion. Darren had learned to notice those details. The $5,000 0 cents innovation bonus? Not an insignificant amount, especially for a franchise location teetering on the edge of closure. For a struggling manager, that kind of reward could look like salvation or incentive. I'd like to do a deeper piece on this place, Darren said, measuring his words. Maybe spend a few days here, meet the team, get a feel for the rhythm. Would that be possible? Kyle's enthusiasm flared before he could rein it in. Absolutely, he nearly shouted, then quickly toned it down. I mean, yes, that would be amazing exposure for us. We've got a great staff, hard-working people who really care. Perfect, Darren replied, voice smooth as silk. I'll need to observe all shifts. Breakfast, lunch, maybe even closing time. Get the full story. Whatever you need, Mr. Mitchell, Kyle assured him, bustling off with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. As the younger man disappeared into the flow of the restaurant, Darren leaned back, his journalist mask slipping slightly. He studied the space again, not just the decor or the crowd, but the soul of the place. Somewhere among the clatter of dishes and aroma of syrup, someone had resurrected his childhood, and they had done it with such care, such uncanny precision, that it couldn't be a fluke. He took another bite of pancake, letting the flavors settle deep in his chest like an echo. Grandma Rose's voice came back to him, soft and certain. Baby, food is love you can taste. It tells on you when your heart's in it. These pancakes weren't just food, they were testimony. He pulled out his phone, fingers dancing over the screen as he typed notes under his alias. Day 1, Portland location surpassing expectations. Pancake recipe potentially revolutionary. Manager claims authorship. Recommend extended observation to verify origin. Document workflow, assess replication feasibility chain-wide. But beneath the professional summary lived the real reason for his stay. Someone here knows the secret I've been chasing my entire career. and I'm not leaving without the truth. Over the next 3 days, Darren moved through the space like a shadow, observing morning rushes, chatting with staff, capturing photos for his blog. Kyle remained a constant presence, always eager to narrate, always pitching a version of the story that sounded just a little too perfect. Yet something never quite clicked. The staff were cheerful, proud, but none seemed connected to the pancakes in the way Kyle claimed to be. It wasn't until Thursday night that Darren decided to stay late, hoping the quieter hours might yield more honest truths. "We close the kitchen at 9, Kyle explained, shrugging into a worn hoodie. "But Norah stays until 10 most nights to clean and prep. She's been with us almost 2 years, super reliable." The name didn't register, but when the final customer left and the lights dimmed, Darren saw her. She emerged quietly from the back, carrying a bus tub filled with dishes, her movements smooth and deliberate, like someone who knew how to glide between chaos and calm. Early 30s, maybe, auburn hair pulled into a practical ponytail. Her eyes, a deep brown, met his only briefly, but in that glance, Darren saw something: awareness, intelligence, wounds maybe, but dignity too. "You must be the food blogger Kyle mentioned," she said gently, her voice low but steady. "I'm Norah. Can I get you anything else? Coffee's fresh." Darren stood and extended his hand. "Gary Mitchell," he said, "and yes, I'd love a cup if it's no trouble." Her handshake was firm, work-worn palms telling stories of long shifts and honest labor. She moved with silent discipline, pouring the coffee without wasted motion. But Darren noticed the tiredness in her shoulders, the kind that didn't come from a single long day but from years of carrying too much. As she moved through her closing routine, Darren watched her with a kind of reverence. She wiped counters with exacting care, restocked without needing to look, swept like the floor itself told her where the dust had settled. There was no arrogance, no sloppiness, only quiet pride in getting things right. "Mind if I help?" Darren asked suddenly as she began stacking chairs. Norah paused, eyeing him with soft skepticism. "I worked in restaurants through college," he added. "Some habits don't die." She gave a faint nod. "Suit yourself." They worked in silence for a while. Comfortable, productive silence. The kind that made heavy things feel lighter when carried together. Darren found unexpected peace in the rhythm of the work, the scrape of chairs, the feel of clean tables under his fingers. "So," he said casually, "Kyle tells me he came up with the pancake recipe that turned everything around. Must have been exciting seeing that happen in your own kitchen." Norah's hand stilled for just a moment. Then she adjusted a chair with a touch too much care. "Feeling said that, huh?" Apparently it earned him a bonus. She didn't look up. "Sounds about right." Her tone was even, but Darren caught the subtle shift, the tightening of something beneath the surface, a quiet truth trying to keep itself hidden. "I mean," Darren continued, "recipes don't usually come from nowhere. Inspiration has a source. Someone helps, tests, suggests, doesn't just fall from the sky." This time, she met his gaze head-on, her eyes calm and steady, locked onto his. "Does it matter?" she asked. "As long as they sell?" The question hit harder than he expected. It wasn't rhetorical. It was a challenge. A wound. Wearing armor. "I suppose not," he said softly. "But I've always found the creative process fascinating. How people turn memory into flavor, pain into beauty." Norah turned back toward the kitchen. "Ideas are funny things," she murmured. "Sometimes they come from the most unexpected places." He followed, more out of instinct than plan, just in time to see something that froze him in place. At the prep station, Norah began making tomorrow's pancake batter. But she didn't glance at the laminated maple and hearth recipe card. Her hands moved confidently, recalling steps etched into muscle memory, not corporate procedure. Pinch of cinnamon not in the standard mix. An extra egg white, beaten softly before being folded in with careful precision. A splash of vanilla, measured not by spoon but by eye, her grandmother's way. The scent hit him like a wave. It was the scent, the one he hadn't smelled since he was 8 years old, watching Grandma Rose in a faded apron, her hands moving just like Norah's. He stepped forward, voice low but electric with realization. That's not the recipe on the wall. That's not the recipe on the wall, Darren said softly, his voice barely rising above the low hum of the refrigerator. Norah's hands paused mid-stir. For a long moment she didn't turn around. No, she replied quietly, almost like an afterthought. It's not. But it's the one that makes those pancakes worth remembering. Maybe, Darren murmured, watching her as she folded in the whipped egg whites with practiced precision. Each stroke was gentle, reverent, like she wasn't just mixing ingredients, but memories. Recipes are just suggestions, she said, her tone light, but her eyes fixed on the batter. Food isn't about following rules. It's about how you make people feel. She covered the bowl and placed it gently in the walk-in cooler. When she returned, she washed her hands with the same slow care, as though purifying herself from something unspoken. Only then did she turn to face him again. In her gaze, Darren saw something that unsettled him, a blend of quiet pride and weary resignation. It wasn't bitterness. It was older than that. It was the look he remembered from his grandmother's eyes when she told him stories of women who created beauty, raised families, built communities, and got no credit. Just expectations. Why? He asked, his voice low, almost afraid of the answer. Why let someone else take the credit for something you made? Norah dried her hands slowly. When she spoke, her words were softer than a whisper. Yet they carried the weight of truth, sharpened over time. Because people like me don't get our names on things, Mr. Mitchell. We just make sure the work gets done right. She untied her apron and hung it up with an air of finality, her every motion deliberate, as if wrapping up more than just a shift. Drive safe. Portland roads can be tricky at night. And then she was gone, disappearing out the back door with nothing but her purse and quiet dignity. Darren stood frozen, feeling something shift in him. He had just witnessed something real, something achingly human and invisibly heroic. It wasn't just talent. It was artistry disguised as labor. And for the first time in years, he felt ashamed, not for what he'd done, but for what he hadn't seen. That night, sleep refused to come. In his downtown Portland hotel room, Darren sat hunched over his laptop, a third cup of cooling coffee beside him. He had access to every operational layer of Maple and Hearth, but tonight, he didn't care about sales projections or franchise reports. He dove into the digital shadows, the overlooked corners where people like Norah lived, worked, and disappeared. The world was now so Kyle's personnel file told a simple story. Hired 18 months ago. No culinary background. No record of creative initiative. Promoted to manager only because his predecessor quit unexpectedly. His performance reviews were fine. Not exceptional, not terrible, just fine. Then came the email. Subject: Revolutionary Pancake Recipe. Portland, 847. From kyle.peterson@maplehearth.com. To innovation@maplehearth.com. Date: November 15, 2024. The message was gushing. Kyle claimed to have spent months developing a new pancake recipe that had transformed customer experience and sales. His words were full of conviction. The email included a perfectly formatted recipe with every modification Darren had watched Norah make just hours before. The extra egg white, the cinnamon, the touch of vanilla, word for word. 3 days later, corporate responded with praise and a $5,000 0 cents innovation bonus. Kyle thanked them and offered to train other managers in his proprietary technique. He was rewarded not just with money, but status, credibility, a future. But something didn't fit. Darren pulled the store's historical sales data. The spike? November 8th, 1 week before Kyle's email. So, when had the magic really happened? It took him 40 minutes of navigating the back-end systems before he found it. Archived camera footage from the kitchen. Most franchises deleted video after 30 days, but a glitch had saved older clips in cloud storage. He scrolled to November 7th, midnight. The restaurant was dark, but the kitchen was alive. There she was, Norah. She moved through the space with ease, pulling ingredients like a musician tuning her instrument. She wasn't measuring, she was remembering. Flour, eggs, vanilla, a bit of nutmeg he hadn't tasted before but now remembered like a dream. Her process wasn't mechanical, it was emotional. Every batch she tested was followed by tiny adjustments and notes scribbled on a napkin. At 2:30 a.m. she tasted a pancake, closed her eyes, and smiled. Not a customer service smile. A private, radiant smile of someone who had just recaptured something sacred. She left the napkin on the prep counter, a folded relic of brilliance. The next morning Kyle walked in, picked up the napkin, read it, and pocketed it. The camera caught it all. Darren leaned back, bile rising in his throat. It wasn't just about credit. Norah had created something profound and watched someone else profit from it while she stayed in the shadows. And then came the worst of it. Curious, Darren checked the outdoor cameras. What he found broke him. Each night after closing, Norah didn't drive home. She walked around to the back of the building. There, barely visible behind the dumpster, was a battered Honda Civic. Duct tape covered a shattered window. The car sagged under the weight of survival. Night after night, she arranged cardboard over the windows, slipped into the back seat, and disappeared beneath a threadbare blanket. That was her home. She was living in her car. The woman who had saved Kyle's job, resurrected the restaurant, and filled hundreds of customers with warmth and nostalgia, was sleeping in a freezing vehicle parked in the alley behind her own workplace. Each morning, she woke before dawn, brushed her teeth using a water bottle, changed clothes in the car, hid every sign of her struggle, and returned to the restaurant with a composed smile, ready to serve, ready to disappear. One clip from 2 days ago showed Kyle catching her exiting from behind the building. His only comment, "Make sure customers don't see you loitering." Darren slammed his laptop shut, overwhelmed with fury and guilt. Now he understood why she'd asked him if it mattered who made the pancakes. Because in her world, invisibility wasn't just a burden, it was a shield, a necessity. But not anymore. She wasn't invisible now. Not to him. Date: November 15th, 2024. Subject: Revolutionary Pancake Recipe, Portland Store, 847. The email began, cold and proud. Darren read the words with a mixture of disbelief and fury. Kyle's email was a carefully crafted piece of fiction masquerading as innovation. He'd written, "I'm excited to submit my original pancake recipe for consideration. After months of experimentation and testing, I've developed a formula that's completely transformed our customer experience. Since implementing my recipe, daily sales have jumped by 300% and customer satisfaction scores have reached new records. I believe this recipe could be a game changer for the entire Maple and Hearth brand." At the bottom, "Best regards, Kyle Peterson, store manager." Attached was the now famous recipe. Every single detail, The extra egg white, the subtle touch of cinnamon, the vanilla extract added by instinct, not measurement, was exactly as Darren had seen Norah execute the night before. Kyle had stolen her work, word for word, taste for taste. The response from corporate came 3 days later, enthusiastic and congratulatory. Kyle was awarded a $5,000 0-cents innovation bonus and praised for his entrepreneurial spirit and leadership. In his reply, he humbly accepted the praise and even offered to train other managers in the proprietary technique he hadn't created. Darren's jaw clenched as he read the email thread. Each message from Kyle added another lie, another brushstroke in a painting built entirely on someone else's genius. But one thing kept gnawing at Darren. When had this recipe actually come into existence? He turned to the franchise's sales data. The spike in business began on November 8th, 1 week before Kyle's email. That was the turning point. The day the world had tasted something magical. He needed to see what had happened the night before. Navigating the corporate security system took time, but he finally unearthed archived security footage from that week, thanks to a fortunate system glitch that had saved footage far beyond the usual 30-day limit. He fast-forwarded through hours of silence until the timestamp hit November 7th, 11:47 p.m. There was Norah. The restaurant sat in darkness, but the kitchen lights glowed softly as she moved like a conductor in her orchestra. She knew exactly where every ingredient was stored. No recipe in sight, no measuring cups or digital scales. She worked from intuition and memory. Darren watched, transfixed, as she mixed, tasted, and tested for hours. She scribbled notes on a crumpled napkin, adjusting her batter after every mini pancake she grilled. Around 2:30, eyeing them, she finally paused, tasted one final piece, and smiled. A soft, private smile that radiated warmth. She folded the napkin with care and placed it on the prep counter. The next morning, Kyle arrived early for his shift. The footage showed him entering the kitchen, picking up the napkin, reading it, then slipping it into his pocket like it was his own. A recipe, born from someone else's pain, someone else's story. Darren leaned back, heart heavy, eyes burning. Norah had birthed this brilliance in silence, and Kyle had stolen it without remorse. But there was more. He rewound and scanned recent security tapes, noting a pattern in Norah's behavior. Every night, she left around 10 p.m., not toward the employee lot, but around the side of the building. Curious, Darren pulled up the rear camera feed. There, tucked behind the dumpster in a shadowed alley, was a battered old Honda Civic. Duct tape clung desperately to a broken window. Each night, Norah carefully taped cardboard over the glass, arranged a thin blanket in the back seat, and settled into her makeshift shelter. She was living in that car. The woman whose creativity had reignited an entire franchise, who'd given Maple and Hearth the most memorable recipe in a decade, was sleeping in a freezing car 10 feet from where she worked. Night after night, Darren watched the footage. He saw her brush her teeth with bottled water, change into clean clothes behind cardboard blinds, and read by flashlight in the cold Portland rain. Every morning she emerged before the sun, carefully storing her cardboard panels, then walking into work like nothing was wrong. Clean, composed, smiling. And then, 2 days ago, Kyle had seen her exiting the alley. His only response? Make sure customers don't see you back here. Darren slammed his laptop shut. He understood now why Norah had said it didn't matter who made the pancakes, as long as they sold. In her world, survival meant invisibility. Being seen could mean being questioned. Being noticed could mean being fired. But not anymore. She wasn't invisible to him. Not now, not ever again. By Monday morning, Darren's private jet had touched down in Seattle. He hadn't slept. Every moment of the weekend had been spent making calls, drafting internal memos, mobilizing legal and PR teams. His vision for Maple and Hearth had changed forever. When he strode into headquarters in Bellevue, he wasn't just a CEO. He was a man on a mission. In the executive conference room, his top department heads sat in tense silence as Darren placed a file on the table with the force of a gavel. "I want every innovation bonus reviewed from the last 5 years," he said, voice low but thunderous. "Every recipe, every idea, every customer service process. I want to know who actually created them, and I want to know if they got the credit they deserved." Sarah Chin, head of HR, raised a cautious hand. "Darren, we're talking thousands of records, legal exposure. It's going to cost." "I don't care about the cost," he cut her off. "I care that we've been rewarding theft. Systemic theft. How many Norahs are out there? How many brilliant ideas have been stolen because someone with power took credit?" The room fell silent. Within 48 hours, audit results began pouring in, and they were worse than anyone had expected. In Denver, a night janitor had designed a food waste reduction system that saved $40,000 0 cents annually. Credit went to the district manager. In Austin, a part-time server created a loyalty program that boosted repeat business by 60%. Her supervisor took the bonus. In Tampa, a line cook spent 6 months perfecting a gluten-free batter that helped the brand expand into allergy-friendly markets. The franchise owner claimed it as his own. Darren read the reports in silence, his anger simmering into resolve. "This isn't just about money," he told his legal counsel late one night. "It's about systematic intellectual theft, and I won't let it stand. I want back pay for every employee whose idea was stolen. I want updated contracts, whistleblower protections, anonymous submission systems. I want policy changes so this never happens again." But the audit had only been the first step. The true challenge lay in something far more delicate, something that couldn't be fixed with policy changes or corporate resolutions. It was rebuilding trust. By Thursday afternoon, Darren found himself back in Portland, sitting silently in a rented SUV parked outside the very same Maple and Hearth where the storm had first begun to shift. Through the window he could see her, Norah, moving through the space with the quiet grace of someone who found order even in chaos. To any passerby, she was just another waitress, efficient, professional, unassuming. But now, Darren saw the truth. She was a master craftsman, a hidden artist, shaping experience with every movement, every touch. He waited until closing. The lunch crowd dwindled. The sun dipped low, casting amber light through the windows. Darren stepped inside during that brief interlude, after the noise of the day had faded and before the rhythm of closing took hold. The room felt familiar and sacred. "Mr. Locke?" she said evenly when she saw him standing at the counter. Her voice was neutral, not cold, but guarded. "I didn't expect you back." He gently placed a weathered leather briefcase on the counter. "I told you I wanted to talk about the real story behind the pancakes," he said quietly. "I keep my promises." Norah returned to wiping down a table, her movements measured, but Darren could see the subtle tension in her shoulders. "If this is about Kyle," she murmured, "he already apologized. And if it's about the recipe, I'll go back to the corporate one. I won't cause problems." "Norah," he said, his tone soft but resolute, "I'm not here to take anything away from you. I'm here to give something back." He stopped, cloth frozen mid-swipe. "I don't understand," she said, turning slightly. Darren opened the briefcase, revealing a thick folder. "Over the past week," he explained, "we launched an internal audit. Innovation bonuses, process improvements, recipe submissions. We found 37 cases where the credit and the money went to the wrong people." He paused, letting the weight of that sink in. "You're not alone." She stood still, uncertain, holding on to silence the way some people cling to breath. "Kyle's bonus," Darren continued. "It's yours now, with interest, along with a formal apology from our executive team." He handed her an envelope. Her hands trembled as she accepted it. "But that's just the beginning." Norah glanced up, puzzled. Darren pulled out a second folder, thicker, heavier. "Maple and Hearth is creating a new position, Head of Creative Menu Development. The job involves traveling to our franchises, working directly with staff, and creating new recipes that come from the people who understand food at its most honest level." Norah stared, stunned. "It comes with a $65,000 0 cents base salary," Darren continued, "full benefits, relocation support, and revenue shares on any recipes we implement brand-wide." He placed the offer on the table. "Your name would be on everything you create. No more stolen napkins, no more invisible brilliance." She sank slowly into a chair, the cloth dropping from her hand like a white flag of disbelief. "This is," her voice cracked, "this is some kind of joke, right? You're offering me a corporate job because I tweaked a pancake recipe?" "I'm offering you a job," Darren said, meeting her eyes, "because you have a gift, and because I've spent 12 years building a company that forgot how to listen to the people who make it matter." She opened the folder and read in silence. Page after page, her expression softened, shifted, widened in disbelief. When she reached the end, where her name was printed boldly, Norah Elizabeth Santos, Head of Creative Menu Development, her breath caught audibly. "I don't have a degree," she whispered. "No management experience. I've never even had a real address." "You have something more valuable," Darren said gently. "You have vision. You have a heart that understands food, that understands people. Everything else can be taught." She looked up, eyes bright with emotion. "If I said yes, and I'm not saying I am," she said with cautious defiance, "I'd have one condition." "Name it." "I want to cook the pancakes myself, at least once in every restaurant I visit. And I want to leave a handwritten note under each plate, something personal, something that reminds people real humans made their food." For the first time in days, Darren smiled. "I think that can be arranged." And as Norah picked up the pen to sign her name, transforming from a forgotten employee into a trailblazing innovator, Darren realized they were both reclaiming something they'd lost. She was being seen, and he was remembering what made his company worth building. 8 months later, rain tapped gently against the windows of a modest apartment in Bellevue, Washington. Inside, the kitchen was alive with scent. Warm spices, browning butter, toasted hazelnuts. Norah Santos stood over a griddle, whisking pumpkin puree into batter, flecked with cinnamon and cardamom. The space wasn't fancy, just 650 square feet of warmth and peace, but after 2 years of sleeping in her car, it felt like a palace. She could cook at 2 a.m. without hiding. And tonight, she was perfecting her autumn pancake concept for tomorrow's executive presentation. On her counter, lemon zest, crystallized ginger, locally milled flowers. Tomorrow mattered, not because her job was at risk, but because, for the first time in her life, she could create without fear of invisibility. Her phone buzzed, a message from Darren, ready for tomorrow's big pitch. She smiled and typed back, "As ready as ever. These pancakes are going to change everything." She wasn't exaggerating. In the past 8 months, her recipes had helped revitalize the entire brand. Her spring strawberry basil pancakes had sold out daily. Her blueberry lavender creation had been featured in Food and Wine, and her back-to-school apple Kedar blend had sparked a 180% sales surge. But tomorrow was about more than food. At the Maple and Hearth Leadership Summit, Norah stepped onto a stage once reserved for corporate suits. She wore a navy blazer and carried nothing but note cards and truth. 18 months ago, she began. I was sleeping in my car behind a restaurant where I worked nights for $12.50 an hour. I created a pancake recipe that saved that location. But I watched someone else get the credit and the bonus. The room was silent. I'm not here for sympathy, she continued. I'm here because brilliance lives in the kitchens of every one of your stores, and it's our job to see it. She clicked to slides, photos of janitors, dishwashers, servers, all whose small innovations had quietly transformed the company. Her words ignited something. Applause swelled, and when Darren took the stage to announce the new From Kitchen to Boardroom initiative, an internal platform to mentor, support, and credit employee innovations, there was no going back. Later that afternoon, Norah returned to the Portland restaurant where it all began. The outside looked the same, but the heart had changed. On the walls, photos of team members, framed awards for innovation, and behind the host's stand, hanging in a place of honor, the original napkin. The placard read, "Where it all began. Original recipe notes by Norah Santos, October 2024. Just in time for the lunch rush," said Maria, the new manager. "Want to see something cool?" Norah followed her to the kitchen window. Plate after plate of golden pancakes left the passe. Each one served with a card that read, "Norah's Mornings, created with love by our head of creative menu development, Norah Santos. We hope this brightens your day the way Norah brightened ours." As she watched customers smile at the message, taking their first bite, she realized something deeper than success had taken root. She'd proven that genius doesn't need a title, that recognition can be the most nourishing thing of all, and that sometimes the most extraordinary change begins with a crumpled napkin. And the courage to believe it matters. She stood in the restaurant where she once felt invisible. Now she was the story everyone knew by heart. Justice served warm, with a side of hope for everyone still waiting to be seen.